All right, it's 10:15, and I suspect we'll have some people straggling into the event as they make their way through our virtual exhibit hall. But we'll go ahead and get things started. My name's Sarah Patterson. I'm the executive director of the Property Management Association, and I am delighted to welcome you to our first ever virtual expo. This is just one of 15 educational programs that we're offering all day today. And then we have some educational programs tomorrow. So be sure to block off some time to participate with us throughout today and through tomorrow as well. For this session, I'm pleased to introduce Daniel Cunningham, who's the CEO and founder of Leonardo 24/7. And joining Daniel will be Kathy Masterson, who is the Senior Vice President of Operations with Panco Management Corporation. And Kathy is also a past president of PMA. These two will take the session away from here. I invite you, if you have questions throughout the event, you may type them in the chat or in the Q&A box. And when Daniel and Kathy finish up, we'll kick over and answer all of your questions.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. As Sarah said, I'm Daniel Cunningham, and I'm joined by Kathy Masterson this morning. We're going to spend some time today talking about automating processes for remote workforces. Kathy, would you like to take a moment and just tell everyone a little bit about Panco and the types of assets that you own and manage?
Sure. Panco owns and manages 40 properties from Boston to Virginia. We're an owner-manager, and the company was started about 49 years ago, so certainly a long history there. And the rate of growth has accelerated over the past 2 or 3 years, sort of exponentially. And we are very busy even this year with acquisitions and dispositions. So a very, very exciting time to be part of Panco.
Sounds like it. Now, Kathy, I noticed, I did a little research, and I noticed that on your website, Panco's corporate values include communication, teamwork, and focus, among other things, all of which I imagine have taken greater importance in recent times, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And, I think when COVID first struck, we immediately formed a task force, a leadership task force to get us through this pandemic. We also determined very early on that we wanted to not only get through this pandemic, but to not allow our key initiatives for 2020 to fall by the wayside. So through the help of this leadership task force and everybody out in the field, we were really able to keep the company's initiatives on track for 2020. And that included, quite frankly, automating some of our processes.
Right, so that leads me right to today's topic. So, a remote workforce is nothing new to multifamily operators. Our community management teams have always been remote. What's different is that a lot of the communication, the teamwork and focus that companies like Panco value so much used to take place during frequent site visits that are now understandably more difficult to perform. In my 20 years of working in the multifamily industry, I've been on both sides of the owner-operator table. At Aimco, I was director of asset management, overseeing around 100 properties. Later, I ran a third-party management company in Los Angeles. And in my experience, I also saw how site teams can lose focus and asset performance can suffer when there's not regular input and guidance from senior leadership. And COVID has challenged companies to preserve this level of consistency and transparency with the same level of or without the same level of localized one-on-one interaction with those community managers. Panco, you formed a sort of a strike team to make sure that still happened. But I think the end result of all of this has been to accelerate what has been a really growing trend for several years now, and that is automating some on-site processes so that operations and maintenance team can be more autonomous and still provide consistent results by executing policies and procedures, best practices in the right way, at the right time, every time. And by introducing a platform that can drive tasks and inspections and process workflows operations executives can now rely on software to manage the minutia, and communication can focus on things like marketing and leasing, or tackling, COVID specific related processes that people need more guidance on. So I would say, Kathy, it's not surprising, given your corporate values centered on communication and focus, that Panco has really embraced the idea of automating on-site operations. What led the company to make the rollout of software like Leonardo 24/7 a priority? What was the impetus initially to look at process automation?
So there were several reasons why we began to look at this software, and we really started looking at it towards the bitter end of 2019. One of the big items for us is we're very transaction oriented, right? So we're buying and selling and moving very, very quickly. And as a result of that, we very often transfer on-site team members from one property to another. So we may transfer a maintenance supervisor who knows everything about Montgomery County code like the back of his hand. All of a sudden he's in Fairfax County, Virginia, and there are perhaps a different set of regulatory agreements at a property that he's moved to. So what we realized is we really wanted the set of inspections and regulatory requirements, all of the minutia that's critically important, right, to reside at the property level, so that on a given day, Daniel, you and I could switch properties or switch places, and by simply pulling up a dashboard when we get to work, we know what our top priorities are for the day. So it was very important to me to ensure that we don't let things fall through the cracks. Another reason I wanted to find some sort of depository for this sort of institutional and very important information is that we were storing things in sometimes really well done spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, but they may have been stored on the N drive, the R drive, the I drive, and you're working on one version and I'm working on another version, and somebody else says, hold on, you have two different versions. So we realized that just compiling all of that data was very time consuming for the on-site people. And part of what we were looking for is a way to make their lives easier, because I would much rather have them spending their time on site, communicating with our residents, communicating with one another, sort of broadcasting what our goals and values are, than compiling spreadsheet after spreadsheet. So as I said, we started to look at this at the end of 2019. And we were meeting with your team just about the beginning of March. And for a split second, we thought, wow, is this really the right time to roll out a new software platform? And within a 20-minute conversation, we thought, now is the very best time to do this, because we're going to be faced with things that we've never been faced with before. And there's a Winston Churchill quote about don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. So again, in keeping with our let's not let 2020 become a lost year, and at the end of the year only be able to say we survived COVID. We want to survive COVID, but we also want to drive our business forward and improve operations, improve efficiency, and give back the time to the people on site to do the things that no software can do, right? No software can really sit down and listen to a resident's troubles in life. And that's a big part of what we do. Property managers they're shrinks, they're economists, they're social workers, they're all of those things. So by streamlining some of the very basics, we've given them time to be more customer focused. And that's really what we wanted to do.
What was that process like for Panco in terms of resources? I think it can sound intimidating in terms of the kinds of resources you might have to expend to take those procedures, those inspections, and get them automated. What was it in reality? What was that like for you?
The implementation went very, very smoothly. We were concerned about that. Some of my team members, we drilled down, we asked a million questions. And I will say that the vast majority of the work, the heavy lift, was done by the implementation team on Leo's side. But then what we've noticed is over the last 6 months, we continue to improve the information that we have loaded into the software. So what I've said to my team is, look, this is a living, breathing document. And as long as we stay tuned and stay engaged, we're going to make it better and better and better. And the idea is to ensure that we are creating something that benefits the people on site, benefits the regional managers, and also, frankly, for upper management, gives us a window into what's going on a daily basis on the properties.
Yeah, it's one thing to intend to automate processes. It's one thing to put the time in to build out the software properly. It's another thing to get real buy-in and to make sure that people utilize the system. Talk to us a little bit about what's that like? What sort of tips can you give us to improve adoption for automation software?
Okay, so that was a really important part of this decision for us as well, because we didn't want to create an administrative nightmare for people where they just went in and checked a bunch of boxes, right? We said it's really got to be a tool. So 2 things. First of all, our implementation team warned us about don't make this so basic that people resent it, right? So if you tell people when you walk into the office in the morning, don't forget to turn the lights on, they're automatically going to resent all of this because it's too big brotherish. But one of the things that we liked about Leo is that there's an opportunity for a leasing person, for example, give one set of tasks for a novice leasing person as opposed to an experienced leasing person. So we sort of also rely on it a little bit as a training tool, which is very, very helpful. And then we sat with our property managers, our maintenance supervisors, all of our regional people and said, look, if we have included things that are too mundane and too routine, and you find it too repetitive, let us know what those things are. Let's talk about them, and maybe we eliminate some of them. And what we're finding over time is that we received some great advice from the implementation team because there were things that we thought we should include and they warned us against it. We took their advice. So we've only eliminated, I'm going to say, about 8 or 10 tasks that we had originally included, but we have added to the software. So ultimately, as I said, I'd love to get to the point where you and I can switch places, and you may have come from a brand new garden property, Class A plus, and you end up for a day at a property that was built in 1960 and has a boiler inspection coming up. So that's on your dashboard now, and you can be as effective as I was in that role, right? And so we're adding that layer or that level of detail to each one of the properties. So I almost think that we're creating a how-to manual. You can literally, if you have any background in property management, you can show up, look on the dashboard, and know exactly what the top priorities are to run that property as efficiently as possible on that day.
I think you've touched on really what one of the struggles in our industry has been forever, which is so much of what happens at the site level sometimes relies on the local knowledge of who happens to be at that property, and being able to take institutional knowledge like you've developed and just sort of pass the baton from one service manager to the next as people change is, a real game changer when it comes to efficiency, getting people up and going when you have turnover. It is a business with a lot of turnover for sure. So that sounds like that would help a lot. And the panacea of it all, it would be able to drop any person into a property at a Panco property. And because you have systems automated, they could be successful right out of the gate. Yeah, that sounds good to me. There's a few things you've talked about already that was a priority for Panco and when you first launched the software. There are other opportunities with process automation. For example, for municipal code compliance, having software that can read municipal codes, automatically push out the code requirements, the actions that you must take to remain compliant is super valuable. Really hard for people to keep up with those codes and the changes that happen there. On the due diligence front, really performing unit walks and lease file audits using digital inspections can really compress the time it takes and complete those kind of due diligence inspections in hours rather than days. Every kind of inspection, safety walks, pool pH testing, lighting, should all be done with a purpose-built form that's capturing data and then providing actionable reports. So not just what did you see, but what needs to be done next as a result, and how can you track when that's completed. There's items surrounding legal matters, making sure employment posters are posted, sexual harassment training has been taken care of. That can all be driven by automation. Marketing tasks, recording when units are posted on Craigslist or when Facebook posts have been made, checking to make sure the website has current photos and data. On the operations front, lots of things on the operations front. How do you want the tour path walked on a regular basis? Are you holding and tracking safety meetings? Are you capturing we talked about pool pH monitoring, and of course, preventative maintenance. These systems can automatically generate preventive maintenance tasks for nearly every piece of equipment in conjunction with Panco's own processes, right? All you have to do is, in Leonardo's case, all you have to do is tell the system what equipment you have and it will automatically create that schedule for you. Risk management's also a big deal, walking the property, looking for trip hazards, buying salt for the winter, having consistent workflow that drives behavior when you're handling mold remediation or addressing asbestos. That want to make sure that happens the right way every time. And finally, on the list, here's training, driving teams to your learning management system when they need to be there, or even posting your own videos, your own training material, and then tracking who's watched them and when. Of all of those things, well, let me ask it this way. You had your priorities, Kathy, that drove you to look at Leo. At the end of the day, was there anything you ended up automating, either from that list or something else, that kind of took you by surprise, you didn't expect?
A couple of things, and that's what I mean about, this for us has turned into a living, breathing document or set of documents that help us run our business. So, for example, as soon as we made the decision to go ahead with Leo, we needed to find a way to track payment plans in our system. And our property management software system didn't give us exactly what we were looking for. We spoke with several people at Leo, Haley, Heidi. They jumped right on it and created a task for us, a place where we could log notes, et cetera. And again, this goes back to not wanting 7 spreadsheets tracking bits of data, but in fact, it all resides in one place. And in terms of it being a living, breathing, growing, changing, evolving document, just last Friday, we were having a conversation about green up projects that we have in process. So our green up projects, this is very often associated with lenders, new requirements. We had to put some of them on hold because of COVID. We were trying to eliminate sort of anything but truly emergency type in-unit maintenance. So we put our green up projects on hold, and we have in some cases a year, in some cases 18 months, in some cases 24 months to complete the green up projects. But knowing exactly where we are on a per property basis, how many shower heads have been installed in Happy Oaks, we need to know that kind of data. And we thought, wow, that belongs in Leo, because then it will be completely centralized, it'll be controlled, it'll be a task, people will know they have to do it. And so it seems like it's growing and changing with us, and we can sort of make it whatever we need it to be, which is one of the advantages that we see.
Yeah, that's a great example of operational data that was just kind of lost to the ether, before this. There was a lot of work that's being done on site that has not really been tracked, and unit upgrades come to mind, for example. There's a lot of multifamily properties are acquired on the basis of, well, we're going to upgrade and we're going to see a lift in rent, and those processes have been hard to track and to see what's been changed out and the costs associated with it. Those are all workflows and those sort of things that in an automated environment, you can make sure that that kind of data doesn't get lost.
That's exactly right. In the past 2 weeks, I have walked properties, potential acquisitions for us. And it's just shocking when you say to an on-site property manager, well, how many apartments did you change to stainless steel appliances? Oh, a lot. Just no idea. Now, how many apartments did you put in this lighting package? I don't know. And they just ask one another. So that sort of information, you can see it, or I see it when we're looking to buy properties that, owners just haven't really had the wherewithal to track that information accurately. So your due diligence product will help us with a little bit, will help us with that on the acquisition side. But in terms of managing our own properties, these are the types of things that we want to have down to what I would say down to the penny, right? I want to know exactly how much money we've spent on stainless steel appliances and exactly where they are and in how many units. So I think it just, it's a living, breathing, evolving document that can do so many things we needed to do.
What, if I might ask, what's up next? Is there anything of all the things that now you've already automated? Is there anything that's kind of next in the queue that's interesting that your team's asking for?
I would say certainly the tracking on the renovation side. I think that's going to be a major benefit to us. We have some properties in the value add space, and then we also have Class A brand new products. But where we have value add opportunities, we want to make sure that we track that to the nth degree. Because it just helps as you go to exit the property. And we see that all the time on the acquisition side. So we want to make sure that we get that right. And then, we're also adding in, just over the summer, we took a lot of time adding all of the business licenses, different taxes and regulatory items that come up in different states and in different municipalities. So even, for example, in the state of Maryland, Montgomery County has one set of regulatory requirements. Prince George's County has another set of regulatory requirements. So making sure that we never miss those is very important. And I think that it makes so much sense to have this information easily located so that property managers don't get a random call from an asset manager or somebody from the corporate office that says, I need X, Y, and Z. And then the poor property manager goes, on a goose chase looking for this information. Just having it all centrally located, and the available storage that we have now through, I guess it's Amazon Web Services, being able to locate all of that in one place is tremendously it's a tremendous time saver for us.
I can imagine. Well, we've Sarah, do we have questions from the audience that we can questions for Kathy that we can roll to?
We haven't received any questions yet, but we have 40 people on this call, so somebody must have a question.
Well, while somebody's thinking, while people are thinking, Kathy, we've talked a lot about the data that you're capturing. And why don't you talk a little about visibility? Like, how are you able to monitor these things are really being done, and what kind of reports are being generated? What from an executive standpoint, how can you use all of this data that's now being captured, all these tasks and processes that are being verified?
Well, that's a great question. So part of it is that through the reporting in the dashboards that I have, I can see how many people have logged in on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, how up to speed are they on their tasks. And one of the things that I really like is that this is not a just check the box, I did it. But in most cases, in order to complete a task, you have to upload, for example, a document. So I know that people aren't blindly running through checking a bunch of boxes, but they're actually doing the work. So I think the way that the product was designed is so helpful in that regard. Because we as an industry have been sending out checklists forever and ever, right? And the checklists in the past have just been as valid as, you know, sort of the integrity of the individual filling out the checklist. But I think the way that this product is designed, because you've got to upload sort of proof, if you will, it just ensures that the tasks are actually being completed.
Yeah, or taking photos, or the software can, for example, know if a certain inspection is geolocated in the right area. So they said they were doing the roof inspection, they're actually in the area where the roof is. Yeah, there's some ability to sort of passively confirm the veracity of the data that you're capturing. I agree. I think that's important. How was eliminating paper, becoming a paperless office, was that an intended benefit of this? Have you seen notably some progress to that on that front?
Definitely seen progress. I mean, that was something that we undertook quite a while ago in terms of going paperless. But I think what I appreciate most about this is that there is a central repository for information, because although we were paperless in storing things in different areas, which becomes cumbersome at best.
Yeah. And having information stored in one place, but having action on that information happening in another, and not being able to get those two systems to talk can be pretty inefficient, for sure. So the paperless world certainly reduces waste and creates great efficiency, and the automation certainly creates great efficiency in communicating policies and procedures. How about, is there confidence? Let's talk about human error for a moment, because everybody's certainly fallible, and that's one of the things we're also, helping to improve with system automations in place to sort of guide people, just give them guidance on how they should be doing certain things. Do you feel like your teams in the field feel like they have greater confidence in their own in the work that they're doing because they have that guidance now? How does that feel to them?
You know, it's interesting. First of all, I think I'm incredibly fortunate because I have a terrific team of property management professionals all around me. And my very best property managers, the property managers who really mentor and help guide other property managers, they are the ones who really embrace this first, because I think they recognize the opportunity that it gives them when they're trying to help onboard or help to promote from within. So we'll take an assistant manager and try to groom them to become a property manager. And having Leo is just another tool. Our very best property managers are confident in their abilities, but this helps them instill that same level of confidence in people that they're trying to mentor.
Do you think a system like this could be used in actually, you mentioned, if you're promoting people into different positions, is Panco considered at all working the results of the work that's done on site into performance management for the folks that are overseeing those communities?
Certainly. And at the same time that we embarked on Leonardo, we also switched training platforms over to Grace Hill. And so we sort of launched them simultaneously, almost side by side. So we did a lot of links between the two because we wanted them to work in tandem. And absolutely, we think that we've really, in many respects, created sort of a closed circle. So we tell you what, we tell you why, we tell you how, we give you a set of guidelines, we test it, we make sure it's really happening, and then the cycle starts all over again. So.
Yeah, we've really been fighting with sort of one arm tied behind our backs. We've had the training functionality, we've had the learning management systems out there, we've had the ability to communicate what we want to be done. The difference that the leap that we're making now is to turn that guidance, that training into action, and that makes all the difference. You mentioned that property managers. you mentioned something about property managers wanting to use the tool. Tell me how have the teams adapted to to having a tool like this in place? It is a bit of a cultural change. We've relied so much on, like we were talking about earlier, local or institutional knowledge of the folks on site to have a tool like this, to have something that's giving guidance in this way. How has that been received? What have their responses been from now that Leo's launched?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive, and that was something that I paid particular attention to. And I'm still doing it. I'm still asking people for feedback and for very honest feedback. And I particularly go to the people who I know will tell me exactly what they think, whether it's politically correct or anything else. They're just going to be 100% honest with me. And I'm just really surprised at the level of engagement, the level of acceptance. People have really just embraced this. And there are several reports that come out color coded, so they're really easy for me to look at, and in a glance I know what sort of adoption I've got. So they're green, yellow, or red, and the vast majority of our properties are green on a daily basis, which means that the software is being embraced. And I think that that's a testament both to the software and to the willingness of our people to be open-minded and to try new things.
That was one of the questions that we received in the chat, people asking about the technological learning curve. Can you describe a little bit your rollout process?
Yeah, actually, Leo handled the rollout for us. It was incredibly easy. The product is intuitive. In fact, it's been one of the most successful rollouts that I've ever been involved with. So I think because the software is so easy to use, that we didn't stumble. We really didn't have issues there.
Great, thank you.
And Kathy, what would you say to somebody, to an executive who was considering, who's maybe on the fence about a solution like this? What would you say to them? Would you characterize this now as a nice to have or as a must have?
For me, it's a must have, simply because, I think that we're working in a regulatory environment that is more stringent than any environment I've worked in my career. So compliance issues have become more and more important, and missing a compliance issue can cause you to stumble. Stumbling is a loss of time. It can be there can be penalties associated with it, etc. So for me, it's a must-have just because of the fast-paced environment that we're working in, that we're living in, the regulatory environment that we're living and working in. And, we know we're going to have turnover. So it's important to harness that information and have it centrally located. The larger your portfolio, I think the more important it becomes. For me, it's a must at this point.
Now you're an owner and manager, Panco, right? So,
yeah. It's funny how before you have something, you don't even know how much you need it. And so with this tool now, I think back and I'm like, wow, why didn't we have this 10 years ago? Why didn't we have it 15 years ago? So it's really filled a great void for us.
We've had some comments
that's great to hear.
Confirming your thoughts, Kathy. Carissa shares that she enjoys using it now. It makes her job as a manager easier. Horning Brothers rolled out Leo and have been immensely helpful with the weekly training to help us navigate the platform.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the kind of
more kudos.
Right.
I was gonna ask, Panco is an owner manager, so your the way you look at operations, the way you think about software to be deployed, it can be slightly different than, say, a third-party manager, because all the benefits of efficiencies effectively roll up to your bottom line. How do you think the point of view, or should the point of view of a third party operator who doesn't maybe enjoy the benefits of reduced risk, right? Because that's a lot of times those are borne by owners, that sort of thing. How do you think the outlook would be different for somebody who is really focused on third party management when it comes to process automation?
I have done third party management in a past life, and I think in third party, you're constantly being judged. You want to do the very best job you can so that an owner is going to reward you with additional property management tasks, different fee opportunities. So letting something slip through the cracks on a third party contract can be the kiss of death. So I think if you're doing third party business, you really want to make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, because you can lose your business like that. So if I ever got back into that line, I would certainly adopt Leo or another automation process.
Yeah, look, having been on both sides myself, I can say that for owners that don't manage their own assets, and especially those who have really never managed their own assets, it's difficult, impossible really, for them to really fully appreciate what's happening on site, the amount of work that's going in to see those assets. It's so easy to become so very focused on, what is my occupancy, what's my lease percentage, what kind of rents am I achieving? And as a result, it's very easy for third-party managers to stay very focused on just answering those questions and trying to perform to those things which seem to get measured. But these other things that you've been talking about, Kathy, they really lend themselves to asset preservation, to reducing risk, to reducing capital costs from unexpected equipment failures, things that owners really care about. And if a third-party management company can produce a report that also shows those other things that are happening, those things that some people just keep their fingers crossed and like, I hope it's happening, I pray that it's happening. As an owner, that would be appealing to you, I can imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely it would be. And depending on who the owner is, there are so many very large, sophisticated asset management groups out there who are representing investors, and they want transparency. They want a window into what's going on. So to your point, particularly on asset preservation, I think when you're trying to build relationships with third-party asset management companies so that they reward you with additional fee contracts, that this would be an incredible way to let people know that you're doing a great job.
Right, to deliver on the promise of all of the on the operations side. I've been a brunt of that firsthand. I by the way, I've been on the brunt of failing to uphold all of those processes, in my history of working with property management companies, and it's not fun. And in matter of fact, I'll just share briefly one of the things that really led to the creation of Leonardo 24/7 in the first place was a massive boiler failure that happened at one of the properties, and we lost hot water to over 200 units. And the idea that, first of all, that could happen, and because the boiler wasn't inspected properly, that we had no insight into that, and how could we prevent that from happening. But once we understood how to prevent that from happening, which, by the way, was to make sure the inside of the boiler was inspected for cracks in the ceramics, how could we be assured that institutional knowledge would persist for the life of the company through managers coming and going? And that has been very difficult. And Kathy, have you already seen turnover yet that where this baton is just getting passed from another? Have you already seen that in action?
We're just starting to. So we really launched this product in March. And fortunately, during COVID, our turnover has been fairly low. We have, though, during COVID, had to have people fill in for one another. And so it's been very helpful in that regard. And, as I look into the future, I can see where that's only going to continue to grow, both because we're going to as I said, we're always acquiring new properties. We have some just incredibly strong people who we then will have go and help set up Leo as a platform. So, you know, the example that you gave with the boiler failure, where we have boilers and chillers and water treatment systems and main air handlers that need to be properly maintained, particularly in COVID, right? Because now we're doing additional filter changes, et cetera, on those building systems. So this is really going to help us, particularly on an acquisition. Once you pull this data together and you set the property up right from the start, then I think we will execute better throughout the life cycle of the investment for us as an owner.
What do you think it takes? What would you suggest it takes from a corporate standpoint to keep a system like Leonardo 24/7 up to date, to make sure it's constantly updated? Is that something that takes a team of people? Do you have somebody who's head of training that manages it all? Is it how does that happen?
I think it's a team, and so I think it's, you know, your facilities people. I think it's your training people. I think it's your compliance people. But I also think that there is absolutely no substitute for speaking to the people on site, right? Because corporate offices don't have a monopoly on great ideas. I think people in corporate offices are here to facilitate and to speak with the people on site who are on the ground. These are the people who are touching things every single day. And so I think it's got to be a collaborative effort between all of those groups to keep it up and running. And then, you know, I also think that there's an opportunity to really reward people, whether that's with something very small like a gift card, or whether to just recognize them in front of their peers when they are 100%, for example, compliant with Leo and their tasks are being done and done timely, et cetera. So letting people know that it's important, that it's an important priority, goes a long way to keeping it current.
Yeah, this is not, this is not terribly sexy stuff we're talking about, like boiler maintenance and I mean, but
don't say that. Boiler maintenance is one of my favorite things.
All right, I take it back. I retract that statement. But I think your point about that this is not stick, this is carrot, and that there should be ways to make this fun and to encourage people to sort of make a game about this, like, you know, who's doing. I mean, there's a lot to handle on site, right? To be able to do it all is an amazing thing, and to be able to recognize when it's happening when it's all happening, I think is a nice bonus that comes along with the system like this, right? To be able to recognize people really for the first time effectively with transparency, say, look at all these things that you did.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, even a Starbucks coffee card can really make those long evenings dealing with property issues feel better.
Well, that's right. And also, you know, throughout COVID, and I think this is maybe a lesson learned from COVID, I used to do calls on a monthly basis with property managers and maintenance supervisors. And now we certainly do those far more frequently. But I think recognizing individuals during calls like that goes a long way, you know. So even maybe more than here's the gift card, just calling out people who have done a terrific job and letting their peers hear about it, and then asking them how they do it. You know, what is your best practice? How are you doing this so well? I think sharing in those environments is really, really helpful.
Well, keeping esprit de corps up is really important, and especially in times like this. And we've been talking a lot about the operations side, but Kathy talked to us a little bit about speaking in a remote workforce environment. What's Panco done to keep some cohesion amongst the teams, to keep people feeling like they're still connected with regional managers that maybe they don't see as often anymore. How have you bolstered your esprit de corps?
Well, as I said, we do calls sometimes just with maintenance supervisors, sometimes just with property managers, sometimes with those two groups together, sometimes all hands. And we've done everything that I think most operators have tried to do. And that sort of runs the gamut between, virtual happy hours, if you will, to additional company swag, because we all like to belong to something, to an organization. And so with all of the, for example, social distancing and people trying to enjoy more outdoor activities, we found these fabulous, I call them stadium chairs, even though they're not stadium chairs, but they are foldable and you can put them in a canvas bag and carry them over your shoulder. So we had those branded for the company. We, of course, branded all of our PPE. We also I have tried to spend a lot of time, especially in the beginning, just giving people my time. So just having conversations with property managers and allowing them to tell me whatever they needed to talk about, whether that was childcare issues or fears, concerns they had, how they were going to keep the properties running during this pandemic when we did self-quarantine people from time to time. So we were running some of the properties with a short staff. So it was really just everything that we already know, but we had to double down. So it was giving people more time, being more generous with time and listening, and sharing also some personal, insights with them so that they didn't feel alone. I think that was very important. Also with our leadership task force, I wanted people to have a reason to get up and get dressed in the morning. So we do the Zoom calls and we use Teams, etc. But I want to see people. It's not as good as being there in person, but I wanted people to know that it's time to get up in the morning, brush your teeth, do your hair, put on some clothes, and let's get to work. And then I will say that my regional managers have been terrific, because throughout this entire pandemic, they never stopped going to the properties. And my property managers never stopped going to work. And of course, our maintenance teams, they never skipped a beat. They worked every single solitary day. And as I mentioned earlier, for a while, we avoided non-emergency work orders in unit. And we took those people and we pivoted towards doing some common area work, preventive maintenance on systems, etc., additional cleaning, all of those things. And then what happened, of course, was that as a result of that, non-emergency work tickets stacked up. So then we made a plan to tackle those and eliminate those, clean those up, so we could go back to a more like business as usual process. So I have to say that the people I work with were terrific in that when we had to pivot, they pivoted. There was no resistance. And that is a compliment to them. And I know it didn't only happen at my company. I know it happened throughout our industry. So I guess what I mean is that it's a compliment to our industry. We are essential workers. We did show up. We continued to do the job, and we did it in a way that where we tried to keep one another safe. So we took care of each other and we took care of our residents. And that's a pretty special industry to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that really defines this industry, Kathy, is how it really feels like a family at times, and especially moments like this. And it sounds like you're doing a great job nurturing that. Are there any other questions pending?
There aren't any other questions. And Kathy has done such a great job at Panco. We've actually tapped her to do another session today. She is doing best practices for budgeting, bidding, and managing teams remotely today at 3 to 4. So if you like that taste that she gave you, she can give you some more tips and tools this afternoon. Shameless plug.
More Kathy. All right. Well, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you, Kathy. Thank you. It's been great to hear how process automation has helped Panco. Thanks for sharing some of your experience today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I look forward to
Thank
meeting
you,
you in
Sarah.
person someday.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah.
Thank
Yes.
you both, and thanks everybody for attending. Be sure to stay on the platform for the rest of the day. We have a yoga class coming up at 11:30. We have a dance party coming up in, I think, 15 minutes. We have Emily from Hot 99.5 who will be spinning some tunes for you. And we have sessions throughout the rest of the day. I think, Kathy, I think you're the last one of the day, 3 to 4. So we got to hang in it for Kathy, right? Thumbs up for
That's right.
Kathy. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you tomorrow as well. Leonardo 24/7 has a booth in the exhibit hall. So if you have more questions about the platform, you can certainly get answers. Grace Hill, who Kathy mentioned, is also an exhibitor. So you can learn some more about Grace Hill and how they operate, as well as 50 other companies. And we have a job fair component. So if you have anybody who wants to join this wonderful industry, send them our way tomorrow. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.